I'd barely gotten the first nail into the freshly cut 2x4 when a voice like a foghorn ripped through the peaceful morning air. "Excuse me, just what do you think you're doing?" I glanced up, squinting against the bright sunlight, and there she was, a woman in a perfectly pressed pastel pantsuit, hands on her hips, her expression a venomous mix of disbelief and indignation. The conflict was on, and I knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that this was going to be one of those days. What was it about a new neighbor and the immediate assumption of wrongdoing? I'd just bought this beautiful little mid-century home, a fixer-upper with so much potential, and all I wanted was to build a simple deck. Her name, I come to find out, was Carol, and she was the self-proclaimed Homeowners Association president. "I don't know who you are, but you can't just start construction without a permit. Our bylaws are very clear on this." Her voice, a shrill, entitled whine, seemed to echo across the quiet street. My dad had always warned me about the tyranny of HOAs, but I'd assumed this area was exempt. A sigh escaped me, a slow exhale of the morning's hopeful energy. My contractor, a friendly guy named Mike, looked at me with a wry, knowing smile, wiping sawdust from his brow. He'd seen this show before. "We're not in your homeowners association," I said, my voice calm but firm, a stark contrast to her escalating panic. Her face, a study in puffed-up indignation, seemed to inflate further. "Oh, honey, everyone on this street is in the homeowners association. Your house falls squarely within our jurisdiction. You're violating code. You'll be fined, and I will see to it that your little project is shut down immediately." She gestured dismissively toward the carefully stacked lumber and the blueprints laid out on the lawn. The scent of cut pine, usually so invigorating, now just smelled like trouble. The whole thing felt so surreal, like a low-budget Netflix drama where the villain gets to be overly dramatic. Her threats grew more theatrical as she spoke. She claimed she'd have the police involved. She said I was devaluing their entire neighborhood. "Do you have any idea how much work we've put in to maintain our property values? You think you can just come in here and do whatever you want?" She practically shrieked, her voice cracking with fury. Her audacity was breathtaking. All I could feel was a hot, simmering frustration rising in my chest. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee, the lukewarm liquid doing little to cool me down. Was it worth it to explain? Or should I just let her get her little spectacle out of her system? The thought of her running to the county, to the imaginary homeowners association board, and realizing her mistake on her own filled me with a perverse sense of satisfaction. It was a tempting thought, watching the karma unfold without my intervention. But Carol wasn't done. She stomped back to her house, returning moments later with two other neighbors in tow. A frail-looking old man and a woman who looked more bored than concerned. "Harold, Martha, look at this. She's building without a permit. It's an eyesore already. Can you believe the nerve?" She pointed a long, manicured finger at my modest pile of wood, her entire body language begging for validation. They nodded along, a silent, complicit jury. This was it, the public shaming. A knot tightened in my stomach. The humiliation was real, palpable weight pressing down on me. I felt my resolve harden. It was time for the truth. This was no longer just about a deck. It was about principle. It was about not letting an entitled bully get away with a power trip. I walked over to the back of my truck, unzipped my briefcase, and carefully pulled out a folded document. The paper, crisp and official, felt like a shield in my hands. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "Carol," I said, my voice calm, cutting through her continued ranting. "I understand your concern, but you see, when my real estate agent and I were looking at this property, they made a very specific point of showing me this." I held out the official survey, a detailed map of the property lines. "My property, as you can see right here," I said, pointing to a bold red line, is not part of your homeowners association. My property line ends right here, on the other side of your mailbox. Your homeowners association, in fact, stops 1 foot from my property. My home is technically in a separate, HOA ed district. A sudden, deafening silence descended upon the street. The two neighbors shuffled awkwardly, averting their eyes. Carol's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish out of water. The color drained from her face, replaced by a pasty, sickly white. She stumbled backward, bumping into Harold, who flinched away from her as if she were a plague carrier. Her meticulously constructed facade of authority crumbled into a pile of pathetic, useless dust. The twist wasn't just that I was right. It was that she had been so completely and utterly wrong, so loud and self-righteous, without even the barest shred of evidence. It was a beautiful, agonizing moment of comeuppance. I simply smiled, a genuine, happy, triumphant smile, and watched her turn, her shoulders slumped in defeat, and walk slowly back into her house. Harold and Martha just gave me an apologetic nod and quickly followed suit. I returned to my task. The sound of Mike's saw now a beautiful, symphonic hum. The air was cool and crisp again. The scent of pine was back to being a symbol of new beginnings. Her final, defeated walk back to her home was more satisfying than any fine or formal complaint could have been. The neighborhood had seen her for who she was, and the karma, served instantly and publicly, was the sweetest thing I'd ever tasted. The story of what had happened, I knew, would spread like wildfire through the cul-de-sac. It was a good lesson, for me and for her. For me, it was a reminder to stand my ground, to never let anyone intimidate me without all the facts. For her, I hope it was a lesson that the greatest power isn't in a title or a set of rules, but in the humility to admit when you're wrong. A lesson that, this time, was delivered with a resounding, undeniable crash of justice.